Welcome to the Unified Brand Podcast, brought to you by Elements Brand Management, a weekly brand building and brand strategy podcast to help you unlock your brand's potential, stand out from the competition, and create impact. Today we're joined by Alexandra Watkins, founder, chief innovation officer and brand name badass of Eat My Words, a wildly creative boutique naming firm known for creating names that generate buzz and revenue. Alexandra is also author of the top 10 marketing book and one of my favorites, Hello, My Name is Awesome, How to Create Brand Names That Stick. Great to have you on the Unified Brand Podcast, Alexandra. It'd be good to learn a little bit more about yourself, what you do, and eat my words.
Okay. Hi, Chris. Nice to be on your show. So I run a naming firm called Eat My Words, and a lot of people have never heard of this as an occupation, but we name things. So we name products and companies and services for clients from everyone from Amazon, Google, Twitter, Xerox. So lots of big brands, but small brands as well. And I have been doing this I've had my firm for over 15 years and started out as a copywriter in advertising and love naming. Every once in a while I would get thrown a bone and get to name something, and then made the transition over to branding and got into naming and have never looked back.
Cool. Yeah. So what is it that you love most about helping individuals and businesses to develop a sticky brand name?
Well, I love that the name is, everybody that's starting a business or naming a product, everything hinges on the name. They're just waiting for the name. So it's really exciting to help them kind of birth their baby. And it's so cool to look back now, 15 years later, and see brands that I named that are still around and, they're all grown up now. And it's just exciting to be, part of such a monumental piece of somebody's business.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I bet sort of getting in on that journey at the beginning must be awesome to kind of take that process and start it all off. So yeah, what are some of the most common brand naming fails that you see?
Well, the biggest one is people really want to have an exact match domain name, which they don't need to have. So they make the mistake of sacrificing letters, doing weird spellings just to get a domain, when all you need to do is add a modifier word and you can get a good name. So for instance, Tesla for the first 13 years was teslamotors.com, or Facebook until 2005 was the Facebook. Square is at Square Up. So a lot of people, they start at the wrong place. They start at GoDaddy or any domain registrar looking for an available domain, when what they should be doing is starting to come up with conceptual names and then look for your domain name. It's really hard for people to believe this, but we don't even look for domain names until the very, 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 very end. So it's just not part of what we do. And if the client insists on that's what they have to have, we won't work with them. No naming firm will. We all know that it's ridiculous to think that you're going to get a domain name that people can spell and pronounce and understand that's, not already taken.
I think when I listen to your book, I love audiobooks, I listened to your book multiple times, but the one you mentioned in the book was about the peanut butter company and how they were their domain name. That was really clever, really good. And like you said, it didn't have to be the exact domain to match the company. It was cleverly done and actually added to the brand.
Yeah, the company is called Peanut Butter and Co. And they have the domain name Peanut Butter and Co. But the domain name that they use is ilovepeanutbutter.com, because for anybody that loves peanut butter, that's my peanut butter. I love peanut butter so much, I can't even tell you. That name makes such a strong emotional connection, and it's really easy to remember, and it makes people smile. So they could use their regular domain name as their domain name, but why would they? Because, Peanut Butter and Co., it doesn't make anyone smile, but I love peanut butter. People love. I want an email address, alexandra@ilovepeanutbutter.com. That would make me so happy.
Yeah,
they would
definitely.
probably give me one if I asked. They gave me an apron at the fancy food show. They gave me an apron. So they know they're in my book. They're big fans.
Ideal. Yeah, it's the same with Eat My Words. I think Eat My Words is such a great name because it gives you that smile, you know, and all the things that you've got with your brand and the names you've got and the different things you have on the website and how you put it together is it gives you that smile. There's a bit of recognition there that adds to memorability, you know, and it creates that emotional connection that you talk about as well. And it helps to, just solidify that idea, you know, in your mind. It's, really well done.
Thank you. Yeah, people like things that are familiar, you know, and Eat My Words, that's the familiar phrase. I just kind of put a twist on what it means in my business. We started out naming things that make people fat and drunk, which is why what I always say about Eat My Words. But yeah, do you have Wendy's over there, the fast food chain?
No, but we are aware of them, especially with their Twitter, the social media.
Right.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Absolutely
they're
amazing.
notorious for their social media. So their most famous item is called the Baconator. And I named the Baconator back when I was freelancing. I named it for another firm, Strategic Name Development. But that name is one that I forget where I was going with that. But anyway, it's an awesome name. It makes people smile.
Definitely. I mean, if you're going to have something, why not have the Baconator? It just makes sense, you know. It's so what's the story behind the book? How Did My Name Is Awesome?
Well, I didn't want to write a book. I never wanted to write a book. My parents were authors, and I knew it's a lot of work to write a book. So one day I got an email from a publisher that had seen my website, eatmywords.com, which is a lot of fun. And they said, have you thought about writing a book? We'd love to publish one or two with you. And, your website is so humorous and not something that's sorely lacking in business books. So I wrote back, thank you, but I don't want to write a book. And they were very persistent. So I, went in. Luckily, it was walking distance from my house to go to this publisher, which was amazing. So I went over there and met them and talked to some of their authors and realized this is really a first-class publishing company and I should probably write a book. So I did. And I'm really glad that I did because the book opened so many doors for me. And it also forced me to really, you have to, when you teach something, you have to really know what you're teaching. So it really forced me to be better at what I do because I had to be able to teach it to people. So the book, it's had 2 editions, and I don't know, do you have the first edition and the second edition or just the...
Just the first edition, I think.
You've got to see if you can get the audio for the second edition. It's so much bigger. It's 50% more material, new stories, hilarious. Narrator is so much more fun than I am, and the first one as well. So the book has been really, really great. And pretty much every client that comes to us has read my book and then just wants to work with us.
Yeah, it's a breath of fresh air. That's the way I think about the book with regards to a lot of audiobooks I listen to. Like you said, typical business books that can just be monotonous and they don't really engage you, but the book engages you in a way that not only do you learn from it, but it's humorous, it's funny, it takes you on a ride and a bit of a journey. And the way that you do the case studies, I really like those and how you've presented them. And it's a really great book. Really love it.
Oh, thank you. If you like my book, you're going to love my new online course, which is like my book on steroids in Technicolor. I don't know if I gave you access to it, but I'll make sure you get free access so you can check it out. It's a blast.
Cool.
It's a lot of fun. I love color, and my book, there's no pictures in it. It's very, one-dimensional. And my course is like full on, it's like lots of eye candy and, the same humor is in my book, but more. Plus, you can hear my real voice. It was so much fun to do, and there's real lessons. So that was something that I'm really proud of. I'm proud of the book. Obviously, it's done really well, but I'm really proud of my course because it took me a year to put it together, and it was far more difficult than writing a book.
Wow, thanks. Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'll put a link as well in the show notes for anyone listening that wants to check that out because, that'd be awesome.
Thank you.
So in your book, you give some great examples of sort of brand name fails, one of which sort of really stuck in my mind, and it's a ridiculously difficult name of a baby clothing company. So could you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. So this was an organic baby clothing company, if you can imagine such a thing. I didn't know there was organic clothing in San Francisco, and the name was Species, and it was spelled SPEESEES. And they said on their website that the reason it was called Species is because that's how babies would spell species if babies could spell, which is ridiculous. I mean, seriously, And, that's a great example of somebody making an excuse for a really bad name. I think that obviously wasn't what they thought of in the beginning. Like, let's name our company something spelled the way a baby would spell it. They're backpedaling there. And anytime you have to make an excuse for your name, like they did with, well, that's how babies would spell it. Anytime you make an excuse for your name, you're essentially apologizing for it. And that devalues your brand.
Yeah. When you said that in the book, when you read it out in the book, the name of the brand, it hurt my head trying to work out how that makes sense. And there was a few times of that in the book where you talked about brand name fails and how when you read them out, I just couldn't get my head around it. And it's not until you sort of break them down, you really realize that the way that you spell and the way that you say the name and how people are going to talk about it is massive. I mean, Species fails your Smile and Scratch name evaluation test. So could you tell us about the test and share some examples of good and bad names?
Sure. So I have a test, a 12-point name evaluation test called the Smile and Scratch test. And it's based on my philosophy that a name should make you smile instead of scratch your head. SMILE is an acronym for the 5 qualities that make a name great. And SCRATCH is an acronym for when to scratch it off the list because it makes you scratch your head. So SMILE, the 5 qualities that make a name great. The first one, the S stands for suggestive. And that means your name suggests something about what your brand is or does, or suggests a positive brand experience. One of my favorite suggestive names is Amazon, because to me, it suggests massive, a word that I love how you say massive, much more interesting than how I say it. But it's, enormous, right? And I've been to the Amazon River and I know it's huge. So that's a name that's suggestive, right? So metaphorical names are often suggestive. So, and those are my favorite type of names. So that's the S. The M in SMILE stands for memorable. And memorable means that your name is based in the familiar. So we talked about like Eat My Words is something familiar. If your name is something so foreign to people, it's going to be harder for them to remember, because studies show that people remember things that they already have associations with. So that's why metaphorical names work really well. Like Amazon, we all know what Amazon is. Whether you're thinking of an Amazonian woman or the Amazon River, it's familiar to us, right? Whereas a name that was just completely made up, some made up word like, species is, don't get me started. So that's M and SMILE. The I stands for imagery. If people can picture something in their head when they hear your name, it will help them remember it later, going back again to Amazon. The L in SMILE stands for legs, and legs means that your name lends itself to a theme. Eat My Words, our theme is food and beverage. So for instance, our blog is called The Kitchen Sink. We have packages like Supermarket Special and Just the Meat. So we have a lot of fun with that. So if your name lends itself to a theme, it really helps you. Then the E in SMILE stands for emotional, and we talked about that a little bit. If your name can make an emotional connection and resonate with your audience, it's going to help them remember it later. And it's also just going to make them smile, hopefully. That's all about SMILE. And SMILE doesn't mean necessarily make people laugh. It just means that they get it. Everybody, when you get something, you're like, oh, I get it. Like you feel smart. People want to feel clued in, not clueless. So one that I love is GPS for dogs that we name Retriever. And like you're smiling, I'm looking at you and you're smiling already before I even say the name, because I know you know it. Yeah, Retriever, like you get it. And you're like, oh, I get it. It's a GPS for dogs that helps you find your dog. So that's what I mean by making an emotional connection.
Yeah, there's a phrase that we use over here. I don't know if it's the same over where you are, but when the penny drops. And when you were saying it then, the idea of the penny dropping is like you drop it into the money box and it kind of makes that noise, that ding sound. So
yeah.
Penny drops. And when I saw the Retriever brand, when I saw that and how you'd renamed it, and it just, the penny drops, that moment, that aha moment is that moment when everything clicks. And that's what you remember. That's you remembering it. I think it's that bit where it just sinks in.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, thank you. Do you want to talk about Scratch?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Okay, so Scratch, again, is when to scratch it off the list because it makes you scratch your head. These are all deal breakers. You don't want your name to have any of these. It's kind of like what happens with people in their names is people make excuses, right? In the beginning, or like, well, people won't notice that. Or like, it's kind of like when you start dating someone and in the beginning, either you're kind of blind to the issues or you're just willing to ignore them, right?
Yep.
So we all know that. So think of your name like that. And we all know what it's like to be in a relationship. And then down the road, you're like, oh, like I should have seen this, or I should have listened to my friends when they told me, but I didn't because I was just so in love. So don't fall in love too quickly with your name. So these, again, they're all deal breakers. So the S in smile and scratch stands for spelling challenge. We talked about that with species. It's truly the number one thing people do wrong with their name is they spell it. Anytime you have to spell your name for people, again, you're apologizing for it. Gosh, I've seen so many bad ones lately. Oh my gosh, this company reached out to me because they need a new name. It's financial services. We just don't do anything in tech or financial services. It's too hard. But the name is capital, but it's spelled with a Q.
Wow.
I know. And it's like, wait, where's the Q? So it's Q-U capital Q-A-P-I-T-A-L. How do you say that? Capital? Crapital? It's crapital. Like, that's a horrible name. And I know they came to us because they want to change it. It's terrible.
Yeah, definitely. There was the one as well. You reminded me then of in the book, the yogurt, the Greek yogurt before Chobani, the one before it was.
Oh, Faye?
Yeah. And the way that was spelled as well, because that was a head scratcher.
Yeah, it's F-A-G-E, which, people don't know how to pronounce that, at least here. And, people do know how to pronounce things in their native countries. But when things go global, you might want to reconsider changing your name if it's going to be awkward for people. So anyway, I got off on a tangent there. But so S in scratch is spelling challenge. The first C is copycat. You don't want your name to sound like a competitor's name. Stay away from really common words like, QuickBooks is a really popular accounting software. And the copycat name of that is FreshBooks, right? It's like, you see a name like that. And the first thought is like, oh, they copied QuickBooks. Like, you don't want that to be somebody's first thought of your name is, oh, they copied so-and-so. You want them to think like, oh, what an original name. The A in scratch stands for annoying, and that could be spelling your name backward, using numbers in your name. So instead of having, like I saw one, it's called Live Forever, but the forever, F-O-R, is spelled with a number 4. So they're always going to have to spell it, Live Forever with a 4. When you say that, someone has to stop and think, where does the 4 go? Live forever with a number 4. Like, if you think of your own name, Chris Outlaw, your name's so easy. Like, your name, and plus you've got that great last name. It's easy for people to remember because, like, they can imagine an outlaw. Suppose if you were a woman and your name was Chris, I could see people misspelling it with a K. Hopefully that doesn't happen to you very often. But most people have difficult names for people to spell. First name, last name, street name. There's certain streets I would never live on because the name, I could imagine myself having to spell Narragansett, like, oh my gosh. I live on Venice Street, like Venice, Italy. And like, when I say Venice, Italy, people can picture it in their head. So think of that, like all the times you've had to explain to somebody how to spell or pronounce something, and just think about that with your own brand name. You don't want to have something that's problematic like that. Then the T in scratch stands for tame. You don't want a name that's tame because you need to stand out. And if your name is tame, you are just going to fade into the background. So you can't afford to be shy. You have to really be bold. The R in scratch stands for restrictive. And that will look at Amazon. So Amazon's not restrictive, right? Amazon can come out with any product and it fits under that umbrella name. Whereas if Jeff Bezos had named Amazon Book Barn, that would have been a restrictive name. Then going fast forwarding to that S-C-R-A-T, tame. The second C stands for curse of knowledge. And that's where insiders know what the name means. Maybe your engineers know what it means, but nobody else does. That happens all the time, especially in tech companies, or where it's like an insider thing to you, but you forget it's meaningless to your audience. Cursive knowledge names are, just think of foreign, right? Anything that's foreign words, right? We forget that not everybody knows Swahili. So there's a company called Mazinga, and it's spelled Mzinga. And Mazinga means hive in Swahili, but like, who would know that? And again, lots of explaining needed to be done and apologizing for that name. And then the H in Scratch stands for hard to pronounce. And we talked a little bit about that. And yeah, you want to make sure that people know how to pronounce your name and that your name can only be pronounced one way. Here's an example. A lot of people use domain name. They're called CCTLDs, country code top level domains. And those are the domain names that aren't .com, .net, .biz. They're the ones like .io, .ai, .ly. And those can be really problematic. First of all, most people aren't used to them. And when you spell your domain name, they would be like, if you're like, about.me, and they would say about.me.com, like they're expecting the .com. So that's a problem. But another big problem is with pronunciation. So there's a company I saw, their domain is card.io. And I don't know if the company is pronounced card.io, or if it's just card and the .io is silent and they just used it to get a domain name. So you only want your company to be pronounced one way, because like, Chris, if you were telling me about this really cool app named Cardio, but somebody else was telling me about this really cool company called card.io, and someone else was telling me about an app named Card, I would have no idea that was the same company. So you dilute your brand when your company can be pronounced more than one way, and you confuse people. So that's the Smile and Scratch test. If you want to run your name through the Smile and Scratch test, if you go to Eat My Words, hopefully we put this in the show notes. We have the test, an interactive test on our website. You just on the homepage scroll down to, I think it says, does your name suck? Oh, how strong is your brand name? Test it. So yeah, you can just type in your name and then you just answer 12 questions about it. And along the way, you'll learn what you're doing right and possibly what you're doing wrong.
Yeah, I've gone through that test. And like you said, colors and stuff, it's very colorful. And the dashboard I like as well, the kind of dial you've got on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, thank you.
There was one as well that popped up when you were talking then that you said in the book about it was inbox backwards.
Oh yeah, Zobni. Just the worst name ever. Yeah, Xobni. It was originally pronounced Zobni, but then Bill Gates pronounced it Zobni. So they changed the pronunciation of it because that's how Bill Gates pronounced it. But yeah, when people see Xobni, and this is an annoying name on so many Scratch violations. But yeah, it's annoying. People don't spell things backwards. Like even if I said, Chris, spell your name backwards right now, you would have to really think about how to spell it backwards. People just don't do that. If your name was Bob, it would be easy, right? You have to stop and think. And you don't want people to stop to think too hard. You want to have them think for a second, like with Retriever. You don't ever want anyone to look at your name and be baffled or think, look at it like they're trying to decipher hieroglyphics.
Yeah, you put me on the spot there for a second. I thought, oh, wow, what is my name backwards? I was trying to work it out quickly.
It's hard. I can't do it. Yeah, I've been doing these brain exercises and writing letters at 90 degrees, 180 degrees, like different angles. It's hard. It's just not something we're used to doing. So yeah, don't make your name difficult. I always say your name should be like a welcome mat, not like a do not enter sign.
Yeah, and Retriever is really good because you think about if you're having a conversation with somebody and someone happens to mention to you, you already know the brand Retriever, and someone says, oh, let's tell you what, my dog is, constantly getting out the back garden gate and we have to go chasing over town to try and find her or whatever. The first thing that's going to come to your head is you need Retriever, and it's there because it's, you want to retrieve that dog. There's the thing for it, so it makes sense, and it's there in that Rolodex in your mind, just to pull out.
Yeah.
So when it comes to defining, developing and building brands, one of the points in the Smile part of the test that kind of struck a chord with some of the brands that we've worked with recently is a need for legs. So do you see a lot of brands that pass sort of other points of the test only to realize they haven't considered the future or how their brand can grow?
Yeah, so having legs like we do with our theme of food and beverage, it's definitely something really beneficial that most people don't think about when they are naming their brand. And it's hard to do it later if you haven't thought about it in the beginning. And yeah, a lot of companies, and you don't have to have legs, but it really is awesome if you do. So like we named this company Fire. She was a publicist named Lynette Hoy, and her name said nothing about her being a publicist. She was really fiery redhead. So we named her firm Fire Talker PR, and her tagline was hot on the press. And she calls herself the fire chief. She calls her office the firehouse. Like you can see, she's had a lot of fun with it. She has a theme song, which is Fire by the Ohio Players. And when you do my course, she blasts it anytime she does a webinar. So like blast a song. I've done webinars where the producer will put my theme song on, which is Sugar Sugar by the Archies. They'll put it on which is really fun. They'll put it on at the beginning while people are in the waiting room just to kind of get people in the mood. So it really helps. If your name lends itself to a theme song, that's something to think about. So I think that a lot of people are missing a huge opportunity to have a name with legs. One that I love is Jimmy Buffett, the singer-songwriter. He's, billionaire. He's lent his name to all kinds of licenses name. And he had, that was Tommy Bahama. I just bought something of his. Tommy Bahama, by the way, is not a real person. And if you are going to if you're going to make up a name for your company, like it's a person, make it a name like Tommy Bahama, where obviously that's not a real person, or Johnny Rocket. Johnny Rockets is a name of a 50s diner that we have, a chain of, but you don't want your name to be so real sounding if there isn't a real person behind it. And I have a lot of stories about that I can tell you about people that have really regretted doing that. But I regress. Okay, Jimmy Buffett, he licensed his name to some 55 plus retirement communities in the States. You can live in these communities, but you have to be 55 or older. And they have some really nice communities, but none that are tied to a singer-songwriter who's iconic. He's all about the laid-back lifestyle, and his fans are called Parrot Heads, and his big hit is called Margaritaville. And he licensed his name to these communities called Latitude Margaritaville. I mean, who doesn't want to live in Latitude Margaritaville? Oh my God. It's even if you're not a fan of his music, it just sounds great. And here's what they've done with the legs. So the street names are Tiki Terrace, and where I want to live, I want to return address labels from Tiki Terrace. Okay, so write that down. I want email address, alexandra@ilovepeanutbutter.com. And Tiki Terrace. I have a tiki bar here at my poolside retreat where I live, but this is our own little Margaritaville back here. But Flip Flop Court, they have their post office and mail center is called the Coconut Telegraph, which I love. And their dog park is called Barcaritaville.
Amazing. Yeah, when you said the post office as well, when I remember being in a real northern town in Australia when we went traveling, and there was just it said post office on it, but it was literally just 4 posts and then a thatched roof on top. And it's this is the post office. This is amazing. This is proper chilled out, once a week the post turns up and then they deliver it and that's it. It's done, go down to the beach. Yeah.
Yes. You must have been far from water.
Yeah. When you were saying that, then it reminded me of that Coconut Pete's as well in the book you're talking about where they...
oh yeah. Coconut Pete's. I'm looking out at our surfboard fence, but yeah, so that's right. I forgot. So you have read the second edition of my book. If you know Coconut Pete's, that is in the second edition, that story.
Oh, cool.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I have a surfboard fence in our backyard with 26 surfboards on it. And I bought some of them down around the corner. I live by the beach in San Diego, and I bought the store called Coconut Pete's and some beater boards that were really cheap. And I was talking to this guy that worked there, and I'm like, "Are you Pete?" And he's like, "No, I'm Coconut Joel." And I'm like, "Where's Pete?" And he's like, "There is no Pete." I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Yeah, the guy that started it, his name, I forget what his name is, but it was like Bill or something." And he said people come in all the time and they're like, "Yeah, Pete told me that he'd give me a deal." And whenever somebody does that, he knows they're lying. because there is no Pete. And I love that. But yeah, Coconut Pete, that's a great example of a fake name because yeah, I love Coconut Pete. I got to give those guys a book.
I tell you what, yeah, it made me smile when you said that in the book about the fact that they can tell if someone is lying, you know, that's clever, definitely.
Yeah, Pete said I could give it. Yeah, in the book, I say those are the same people that tell you they partied with Tommy Bahama. Yeah.
Cool. So how do you approach extending the naming theme into products, ranges, or services?
Well, I think you have to start with something that has a really wide theme. Like right now, we're doing themes for electric vehicles, and some are definitely more limiting than others. So I know in my course, I give a list of themes, but so like, you know, magic is a theme. So when you're developing your name, if you can think of themes to work with, you know, your theme is magic or your theme is art or your theme is, you know, food like we have, then you can, or fire, like Lynette, Fire Talker PR. If you have a theme like that, then you can really look at extending it where, so like with fire, so what I would say with that is, you know, you can just Google, you know, things related to fire or phrases related to fire, words related to fire, and you'll find lists of these things and, or do a image search for fire and you'll get some ideas. Aviation is a really good theme to play around with, or water, oceans, the beach, like with Latitude Margaritaville, like that whole thing is just, you know, laid back lifestyle. Yeah, there's a company in the UK called Wavelength. It's a leadership organization. And I just named their podcast Making Waves. So there I'm playing off the name Wave in Wavelength. So, you know, that's, if you have a word in your name that you can play around with, that's really good too.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I remember reaching out to you, and our business name is Elements Brand Management. And I remember reaching out to you and you mentioned to me about the idea of how it reminded you of the periodic table and stuff like that. And since then, it's just got my mind reading about different things that could be used, you know, like alchemy and different things, you know, like workshops could be alchemy and stuff like that, building blocks of brands, stuff like this, you know, really cool.
Yeah, the chemistry of brands there is a lot you could do with that, and visually as well, you know, just there's so much imagery around chemistry. Yeah, elements. That is really good. I forgot about that.
So what are some top tips that you can give the listeners today to help them get inspiration, develop a sticky brand name?
Okay. For inspiration, look at stock photography. So for instance, if you have whatever your product is, let's say it's something fast. If you go to a stock image library like, you know, Getty, and you type in the word fast or quick or speed, you're going to see pictures of things that are metaphors for speed. And if you think about running shoes like Puma, right? That's a fast animal. So animals are great examples of metaphors. So if you think of car companies, right? Like Mustang, Stingray, always look to car companies as examples of great metaphorical names. Models have great metaphorical names. SUVs, like the ones like, you know, Sahara, Denali, Range Rover, you know, things like that. You're always going to find good names there. Then things like, Navigator, Expedition. So those are good places to look for names. Names of car models, names of perfumes and fragrances are always good for inspiration because you're going to see names that are full of emotion, like, you know, desire, eternity. I like that. Yeah, stock photos. And then for inspiration of names that are good, I look at our portfolio at Eat My Words. You'll find a lot of good ideas there and things that will make you smile. But I would say the best thing to do is just try to be different. We named a cupcake store the Church of Cupcakes. So we put two things together that you wouldn't expect, but it works. Also try alliterative names where like Church of Cupcakes has the double C in it. So if you have a word that you really like and you want to pair it with another word, you can search for, you know, words that start with C or words that start with A, and you will find lists of these words. They're in Scrabble dictionaries. So there's a lot of resources online if you just know where to look.
Cool. Well, some of the name rebrands you've done are really good and really memorable. One of the ones I liked a lot was the frozen yogurt franchise, which was Zenyo, but you rebranded it as Spoon Me, or the GPS for dogs like we talked about earlier, was it Gibi rebranded as Retriever?
Yeah, Retriever, yeah.
So how long does it take to come up with names as good as these?
Well, we usually spend 3 weeks on a project, but I have been doing this for so long that I can come up with names usually over the phone. Whether they clear trademarking is another story, but we spend usually 3 weeks on something. If we have fewer time, we'll just put more people on it.
Cool. Yeah, it's similar to some of the sort of things we do with regards to the visuals and with the brands. Like I'll talk to somebody on the phone and I've already got an idea in my head or a picture when I'm talking. And a lot of the times I'll try and move away from that, but it ends up coming back to the first thing I thought of. And generally that kind of initial ideas generally tend to be the best, I find.
Yeah, I think with Spoon Me, it definitely wasn't the first idea. But what's interesting is, so in my book, as you know, I use Spoon Me as an example to show people how to brainstorm. But then for my online course, I used it as well, but I wanted to dive deeper in my online course and show people how to coin names, so invent names. So I started coming up with more frozen yogurt store names, and I came up with some that I really loved that I hadn't come up with when I actually had the real project or when I wrote my book, at which time that I did have to come up with more as well to show how to use some new tools that I had found since then. So it's amazing. The longer you look, the more names you're going to find.
Cool. Yeah. So how do you approach taking that and then developing, say, a tagline to pair with the brand names you create?
A tagline, well, that's where it helps if your name has legs. So tagline, after we do the name and it's, looks like it's going to clear legal trademarking, then we'll come back to it and write a tagline. So, a tagline can help support a name. If you have a really good name like Spoon Me, you don't even need a tagline, right? And your tagline can change, which I like. But I think the key to a tagline is not using don't use your name in your tagline, but just have something that plays off of it. My favorite tagline ever is for cotton, and it's cotton, the fabric of our lives. And that makes such a strong emotional connection. So I think taglines are great for that.
Definitely. I like the one you mentioned earlier from the Fire Talker PR as well. That was really cool.
Oh, hot on the press. Yeah, I love that.
Cool. So have you seen any companies recently that you think have nailed their brand name?
Yeah, one name that I really love, this was a student of mine came up with this. He is a CrossFit guy, and he invented a product to help people grip the rope when they're doing rope climbing, so either with their feet or their hands. And he named it Jack the Gripper.
Cool.
And and then that cleared trademarking, and then the company is going to be called Gripline, like Zipline, and then his domain, I think, is going to be getgripline.com. Yeah. And I helped him with that. When you take my course, a lot of people sign up for the option where you can get coaching with, and I helped him come up with those names. And it's really fun to work with students that are going through the course.
Cool. Yeah, I like that. That's really good. Really memorable. And yeah, it makes you smile, which is always good.
Yeah. Yeah. He's got a great identity for it. I won't spoil the surprise, but the design, it's nothing you would expect for Jack the Gripper. It's something really unexpected, and I love it. I absolutely love it.
Cool. Yeah, I have to, I'll check that out when it comes out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been really good having you on. And I could talk all day with regards to brand names. It's really interesting and exciting. I like it. So thanks very much. And where can people find more about you, about Eat My Words, your book and your course?
At eatmywords.com. That's the best place. And yeah, I have a mini masterclass that people can take. And yeah, you can find out about the book and the course and all that there. I recommend the mini masterclass. It's a lot of fun. And you'll go through the smile and scratch test there. And there's a lot of great examples and lots of eye candy as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'll put all the links in the show notes. And thanks again. It's been great. And hopefully we can do it again at some point.